Hi, I'm Nancy Nelson, and this is Lesson 1 in a series of courses of U.S. taxes for traders and investors. This is an overview of what we intend to cover over the course of about 10 lessons here. And some of the lessons have multiple parts. So this will tell you what you might want to watch, what you're not interested in, what you might want to go back to. So we're going to start off, our first lesson is on interest, and we started with this because it's basically after your wages on your first line on your 1040, so it seemed a logical place to start. It's also the basic thing that people start with, even as children when they have savings accounts, they have interest income. So that's why we're starting here. And we're going to cover things such as savings and bond interest, certificates of deposits and commercial paper interest, treasury bills, notes, and bonds, municipal bond interest and other municipal interest, and how it's impacted by the alternative minimum tax or the AMT, amortization of market premiums and discounts, and then we'll talk about original issue discounts and how they impact bond pricing and how they work. The second lesson is on dividends, and we're going to talk about ordinary dividends and qualified dividends and the difference between the two, what makes a dividend a qualified dividend. Dividends from money market funds, don't forget those are dividends, even though you think they're interest, they're dividends. And dividends from mutual funds, reinvested dividends, including automatic dividend reinvestment plans, which often we call commonly DRIPs, and payments in lieu of dividends received or payments in lieu of interest received. The following lesson then, going on to lesson number 3, is capital gains. And we've broken this into a couple of sections. So the first lesson on capital gains is about stocks and mutual funds. And we're going to talk about what are tax lots, how are they determined, how are they made up, tax lot methods. So when you sell something, are you dealing with first in, first out, or FIFO? And then what else do you create by using some of the algorithms that are out on the marketplace? And how do those work with your tax lots? Holding periods, what makes something short-term, what makes something long-term, and tax rates. That's a little bit of a tougher topic because it's changed for 2019 when we're filming this, but it's changed over the years also. Then we're going to move on to capital gains and cover it for bonds. And we're going to talk about treasury securities, corporate bonds, and then bonds, discount, and premiums. The third lesson on capital gains is special considerations and products. There's several things that are in the tax code that make capital gains that aren't ordinary a little bit more difficult. First of all is how do you calculate basis and what to do when a security isn't covered. And we'll talk about what that means in that. What is a covered security? We'll talk about wash sales. We'll talk about index options and Internal Revenue Code section 1256. We'll talk about commodities, and we'll talk about foreign exchange gain and loss. Once we're done with that, we've pretty well covered the capital gains arena. We're not going to cover talking about things like selling your home. That's not part of this course. This is for traders and investors, so that would be outside the purview. Publicly traded partnerships is up next. There's a lot of special considerations that people forget when they buy a publicly traded partnership or an ETF fund that is a trust rather than a corporation. We're going to talk about what they are, why they're different, and how does this impact your tax return. Distributions from them, which a lot of us think are dividends but are not. Return of capital. What to do with your K-1 when you get it for your tax return, the cost basis for gain or loss, because these are not covered securities. We have a new code section that went into effect for 2019, section 199A, the 20% business income deduction, and we will talk about how that fits in and how dividends also fit into that question. The next topic. Net investment income tax. We're going to talk about the history of this tax, which is actually not part of the tax code. It's actually part of our Healthcare Act. We're going to talk about who it impacts, what income is subject to the tax, and special considerations if you are a partner or own one of those publicly traded partnerships and for businesses of this tax. The next topic is trading expenses. The rules about trading expenses have changed drastically for 2019. So it might cause you to take a second look of whether you want to treat yourself as an investor for your tax return or as a trader. We're going to talk about the rules that make someone a trader versus an investor. We're going to talk about payments in lieu paid on interest and in dividends. We're going to talk about margin interest expense. We're going to talk about stock borrow and loan fees that you may pay if you are participating in a margin program, advisory fees that you may pay to your advisor, and any account fees you may pay. Next topic is more in-depth dive to the trader and investor area, and we're going to talk about the strict rules and some of the court cases in this area, the requirements, the advantages, the disadvantages, tax and audit considerations, and it is an audit consideration. The IRS loves this area. And Section 199A, that 20% deduction again, the new part of the tax code for the qualified business deduction and how it impacts this area. We're going to talk about the next lessons about retirement accounts. And it's a bit of a longer lesson. It has several parts. We're going to talk about the types of accounts and the tax considerations. We're going to talk about IRA accounts. We're going to talk about SEP IRAs. We're going to talk about some of the 529 plans that you may have for college savings plans. We're not going to touch on pension plans, but we will have a little bit of what happens to them when you do retire in that area. So that's an overview of what we're talking about in this body of courses. We hope you enjoy them. Hopefully this will give you an idea of what you want to tune into or what you might want to pay attention to when it comes out on the web.